Hey, let's talk tomatoes. First, let's talk about the two main types, indeterminate and determinate. Indeterminate tomatoes can't determine when they want to make a fruit, so it will happen all summer. Determinate fruits, they're determined to make all of their fruits at one moment in time, all at once. So those are better for making like sauces, whereas indeterminate are better to just kind of have a steady supply all summer long for eating. And so keep that in mind when planting those two varieties. Also, determinate varieties are often squattier, and indeterminate varieties are often longer and leggier. Next, I'd like to show you some techniques for preparing your tomato plants for planting and some main mistakes people make. First of all these little nodules and hairs on the tomato, those can become roots if they're exposed to the soil. So we're going to snap off these guys, which are called suckers and leaves, and then we're going to plant it up 2 or 3 nodes. So we're going to plant it all the way up to here. So we have to dig a pretty deep hole. And if you don't have enough depth to do that, you can also dig a trench, lay it in the trench, and then bend the tomato up at the end. And this is also acceptable. When we fill in the soil, we want the soil to come up to just underneath this node, and we want to try to keep the leaves from touching the soil. Here would be an example of a tomato that has got too tall for my garden, and I cannot plant it that deep. So I will run a trench method. Lay it down in there in the trench, and then we're going to gently bend it up and then fill in the soil around it.
You're welcome. I'll dig a hole, okay?
Good job. Next question is, should I stake my tomatoes? Should I put a cage around them? Or should I do a vining method where I wrap them around a string? Let me tell you how I make that decision. So here we have likely vining sun golds that will be all 4 together. And so I'm going to be vining them and tying them up to this window. There's some old curtain things here. And then I will vine them. They just have stakes in there now to get them started. And because they will vine up, I will pinch the suckers, and we will hopefully have dangling sun gold cherry tomatoes right in front of our pantry window. These are 2 big beefsteak tomatoes, and so they will be getting the cages minus the string from last year's, where I used these cages for peas. In fact, tomato cages are great for peas and other things as well, but this year they will be used for the bigger tomatoes because the bigger tomatoes have bigger fruit, and I like to rest the vines over the cages, and that's why I use cages for big stuff. A good old-fashioned staking method. These are early girls, mid-sized tomatoes, some of them determinate, some of them not, pretty bushy. And so one big, fat, heavy stake in the middle that I will be tying them up to as they go is kind of my route there. So it's not an all or nothing. We don't need to fight about it. There's a lot of fighting on the internet about tomatoes. People get very serious about it, but it doesn't need to be. And you know what? It's just a tomato. Either it's going to go well or not. Some other piece of advice: some people pinch suckers, some people don't. One last little piece of advice: don't be like me and plant, tomatoes next to onions. I will be pulling these out to eat them here shortly, but you're going to want to plant them closer to things like strawberries, legumes, lettuce, carrots. These are all things that radishes, beets, these are all companion plants that are much better choice. All right, so that's the wrap on tomatoes. Whether you're staking, caging, whether you're indeterminate or determinate, whether you are battling people on the internet over whether you should pinch suckers or not pinch suckers, don't worry about it.